Hello again, it's the Brown Jewels. Here we are, it's episode 3, and I've not quit yet. Yeah. I'm starting to get the hang of this podcasting thing, starting to get the hang of the editing. It's not becoming an absolute living nightmare like it was in the beginning. I'm enjoying the recording. I've actually still not put any of these out yet. By the time when you hear this, 3 of them will be out. But as I'm doing this, I've not even put one out yet. Because I thought, get 3 in the bag and then we'll put them out. But this third one is a good one. This talks about a bit of behind the scenes in comedy competitions and just how not enjoyable they are. Travels around the UK, international travel for gigging. I mean, I've done 1 gig abroad. It counts, though. It fucking counts. You can't take that away from me. But feel free to tell me what you think of the podcast. What do you think of the Brown Jewels? Is it good? Is it bad? Should I quit? I'm not going to quit. But you can tell me that if you want, because I think I'd quite enjoy it. Let's get some haters on board early doors. Let's get some Brown Jewels haters. That's what I'm looking for. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble too much at the start, because I do a lot of that at the end when I don't know how to sign it off. So for now, enjoy episode 3 of the Brown Jewels. So last year, I entered a comedy competition in London. Ooh, how exotic. I've never gigged in London before. I've only really gigged in England maybe 2 or 3 times before this. So first time gigging in London. First time doing a comedy competition. You're like, wow, that sounds exciting. A competition for comedy. That sounds like a really cool process to go through. It isn't. Comedy competitions are the worst thing about stand-up comedy by a mile. And this is probably going to sound like some kind of like bitter rant because I've never won one. But anyone, even people who win comedy competitions, will agree they are a big piece of shit. If you've never been to a comedy competition before, what it is, loads of people doing like a 5-minute set, and then you get judges, people who are working comedy, who know about comedy, they have an idea of what they're talking about, they'll maybe vote for like one person to go through, and then the audience gets a vote on who goes through. But what happens at these stupid shows is that people bring like 15 of their mates so they can get voted through to the next round. Even if they're absolute pish, they still get voted through. It doesn't happen so much in later rounds, as by that point they've really weeded through the shit. So they're not in the later rounds, but I've seen it happening. I've seen shit comedians get to the final off the back of just bringing loads of people. So I mean, it ain't the greatest. They ain't the greatest thing to be taking part in. But up until last year, I'd never entered one, so I thought, do you know what? I'll give it a bloody go. And I entered the Leicester Square New Comedian of the Year competition. Ended up having to go to London twice for this. So I did the Heat quarterfinal, got bombed out of the quarterfinal. I mean, the competitions themselves were very uneventful. I travelled all the way down for like a 5-minute spot, spent a couple £100 on that, and then you've got to go back and then spend another couple £100 getting to London, staying in London, eating in London, doing all that. So even if I had made it to the final, it would have cost me like probably more than £1,000 to do that, to do an unpaid comedy competition. I mean, the second round, when I went down for the quarterfinal, I came out with a lot of energy, and it was a 5 o'clock show to like a London arts crowd. I came out with a lot of energy. One of the other people in the competition described it as, I came out with live at the Apollo energy for a room full of about 20 people. Some of them weren't really interested in being there. And it wasn't well received, shall we say. You could normally tell after maybe 30 seconds in, you're like, oh, this isn't going to go well. But you have to just keep ploughing through it. So I did. And unsurprisingly, didn't get through to the next round. I remember these 2 old people who were about easily in their 70s sitting in the front row, and they didn't even crack a smile at any of my set. And when someone in the front row isn't enjoying your set, What you then do is you can only focus on that person. You don't see anyone else in the room. You keep going like, oh, here's a joke, and then check down to see if they're laughing. Nope, still not laughing. Okay, how about this next one? Look down. Nope, still not laughing. These two people were just like, get this Scottish idiot out of my face. Shut up, you little arsehole. Why the fuck, every time I do this, some little shitty little kid outside the window starts, nah. Shut up. I don't even know if you can hear them, but I've just told a child to shut up. People should do that more often. So I was actually lucky to get bombed out after the second round, because this competition cost me an absolute fortune. And I kept costs to a bare minimum, like the barest of minimums. Some people probably would have looked at the amount I spent and thought, how did you manage to stay in London for that amount of money? Let me tell you. So, train down. I could have got the overnight bus down. I mean, if anything, this was luxury to me. And this time I was like, no, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to get the train down. Ended up booking like a 6-hour train because there was walks in between Edinburgh and Newcastle. So the journey went from Edinburgh all the way over to the west coast to Carlisle and then all the way back over to Newcastle. It took over 3 hours to get to Newcastle from Edinburgh, which I believe is less than a 90-minute journey. Now, here's something I do when I'm booking accommodation. Almost anywhere I go. I just, in my head, I'm like, oh, it's just somewhere to sleep. It's just a bed. You know, why would you splash out money? It's typical, stingy, Scottish fuck. I'm just like, it's just somewhere to sleep at the end of the night. So I never go overboard. With that. If anything, I go very underboard. And I grudge it. I'm like, oh, what am I paying this for? Beforehand, I always grudge it. Before I go anywhere, I always grudge paying the money. A couple of years back, my last foreign holiday I went on in 2019, I went to Budapest. I'd always wanted to do a comedy gig abroad somewhere, so I'd always fancied going to Budapest. I've got a really good English-speaking comedy scene, so I thought, Budapest, you're ticking all the boxes for me, let's book it. Booked it very spur of the moment, minimal research into where I was staying. I think I just booked cheap flights. I think I went on booking.com and I just booked one of the first places I saw based on location alone. That's what I do. I go, is the location good? Good. That's what I'm looking for. I can't be arsed walking anywhere when I get to places. So if the location's good, then I'm all in. So I didn't do any research into where I was staying. I've talked about this on stage. That feels like an absolute wanky thing to say. Oh, I've talked about this on stage. But it's just, I always feel like if I'm telling people something, and they might be hearing it for the second time, I just kind of want to say, look, I know you might have heard this. So in no way am I trying to be like, oh, but, come and watch my art if you want to hear this story. Not doing that. So I booked a place called, it's genuinely true, some people don't believe this. I booked a place called the Lazy Muggle, keyword being Muggle. Didn't know what that word meant. In my head, I was just like, oh, I wonder what that is. It's Hungarian, maybe? Don't know what it means. Anyway, they had a good location, so sign me up. I can't remember when it was I discovered what the word muggle meant. I think it might have just been like a few days before I was going, and maybe someone asked, oh, where is it you're staying over there? And I told them, they burst out laughing, and then I realised I'd booked myself into a Harry Potter themed youth hostel, which is devastating on so many levels. Because I don't fucking like Harry Potter. I don't like it at all. So then I'm like, oh shit, what have I done? So then I start going online, and I start looking into it more. I'm like, oh my god, I cannot believe this is where I'm staying for my nice wee holiday to myself. Again, had the opportunity to treat myself. Had the opportunity to do that, and I didn't do it. So then I was like looking, right, I'm going to change it. And then, because it was so close to the actual time, everywhere was really expensive. I was like, well, I'll just go to another hostel. There was private rooms in some hostels, but they were always like, it was like, hey, this is the party hostel. I don't know why I did a German accent. They're like, hey, this is the party hostel, and everyone like in all the pictures, everyone was wearing like fluorescent clothing and like glow sticks, and all they were talking about like, we know how to party at. Again, I don't know why I'm doing German accent. We know how to party at the party hostel, and everywhere was just like that. All the alternatives were shit or too expensive, and I was like, oh fuck. Again, too stingy to pay more to change this situation. So I get the flight over, and I'm trying to find this hostel. I'm walking through the streets of Budapest by myself. I'm looking around, I'm like, it's on the street somewhere. I can't see like a big fancy sign or any kind of signage. There's no signage for this thing whatsoever. And eventually I'm on Google Maps, I'm walking around, and then eventually it's like a big resident. It looked like a huge. It's just a big building. Looked like a big block of flats. And just on the buzzer, on the little entry buzzer thing, it just had a cheeky wee sticker that just said like the Lazy Muggle. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. So I buzz in, and I'm walking in, and it's like a dimly lit. It's like something out of a horror film, like a dimly lit Soviet era looking building. There's not any lighting. There's no signs telling you where to go. So I just start walking up these stairs. I'm like, oh, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this is where I'm staying. I get to the front door, get buzzed in that door, walk in, and as soon as I walk in, I'm like, oh, you should have just paid more. You should have just paid more. This is the thing. It's always that. I always have this thing of like, beforehand, I'm always like, keep the cost to a minimum. And then as soon as I'm experiencing the accommodation, I'm always like, you're an idiot. Splash out. Just pay it. It probably would have been like an extra 30 quid or something like that. Probably would have been that. So I'm in this fucking Harry Potter hostel, and I try to get a private room. The person at the reception desk was sitting wearing a cloak. I was like, oh, shoot me now. Shoot me now. Everyone else was about fucking 10 years old. All these little fetuses are just kicking about there watching Harry Potter in the wee lounge bit. I was like, oh my god, get me out of here. So then, the room I'm in is called Hufflepuff Tower. Genuinely, Hufflepuff Tower is the room I'm in. I'm like mid-30s, and I'm staying in a bedroom called Hufflepuff Tower. Everything about it was just like, oh, look at me living my best life out here. This is brilliant. And it was a shithole. An absolute dump. Lazy Muggle. Lazy. Say who the Lazy Muggle was, the cleaner. The place was an absolute shithole. Never been cleaned in its life. I asked to get a private room. They're like, oh, you can have a private room for your last night if you want, but you can't have one, so you need to sleep in Hufflepuff Tower. Like, oh, brilliant. Oh yeah, put me down for the night of luxury in the private room for one night. If I make it that long, if I've not beaten myself to death with a broomstick or something, I asked for a private room and they wouldn't give me it. I think it was like the receptionist, one of the receptionists was like, had the private room, and weird wee guy, very weird little guy. We all go on like a pub crawl. I just kind of fell into the trap of like, oh, I'm in a hostel. Went on a pub crawl to the ruin bars, which are actually really cool in Budapest. And I get there, the receptionist guy, he's leading the pub crawl. He gets steaming, absolutely steaming. He tells me he has the private room in the hostel. Then he tells me that he's a male prostitute. And he's just getting absolutely railed in this private room all the time. He's running a sex brothel from the private room in the Harry Potter themed youth hostel. And I was like, this is fucking priceless. I was like, J.K. Rowling would not have signed off on this. This is not an official Harry Potter sex brothel. I don't believe that there is one of them. So this is the madness. This is the kind of places I end up because I'm too tight to just splash out a little cash. And part of this is also down to minimal research on where I'm staying. That fucks me every time. So I try and learn my lesson. I never learn my lesson. Gigging in Budapest was fun though. That was a hell of a lot of fun. I realised very early doors that the Scottish accent, not easy to understand. It was an English-speaking comedy night, so I hadn't learned Hungarian or anything like that. But they were all struggling with my accent. As I turned up to the gig, I was like, oh, hey, I'm here for the comedy. And the two people looked at me like, What the fuck did you just say? So after that, I enunciated to hell. You had to tell true stories. You had to tell stories about something that had happened to you. And I'll tell you what, if I ever go back to that gig, my next story will be about how I ended up in a Harry Potter hostel, surrounded by all these Harry Potter nut jobs. All of them tell me I look like a fucking guy called Neville Longbottom. Look that up, by the way, he's a fucking gimp. It's not a very nice thing to say to someone's face. Hey, you look like Neville Longbottom. Little arseholes. What a great trip that was. So I swore to myself after that, learn from your mistakes, Ralph. Don't stay in shit accommodation again. But do I learn from my mistakes? No, I never do. So the competition in London, I think I maybe did a little bit more research. But again, you're trying to keep costs to minimum. So if you know the going rate for accommodation in London, then you'll know that me paying £50 for somewhere in London, you know I ain't getting luxury. Not even a sniff of luxury if you're paying £50 a night. So again, pick it based on location. Is it near the competition? Because I can't be asked walking. Yes, it is. Perfect. This is what I did. I looked on Street View and I thought, that looks like a really nice street. I booked a place. It was called Pickwick Hall. Pickwick Hall. You can look it up if you want. You can look it up if you really want a bit of a laugh as to where I stayed. So when I get down there, when I get to this place, I'm walking down the street and I was like, tell you what, by the way, it's a nice wee part of town, Ralph. You've really landed on your feet here. And as I was walking down this really long street, I can see at the bottom of the street, there's just a guy hanging out the window, looking up the street towards me. I'm like, that's strange. So I'm kind of walking down the street. I've kind of got looking for the number of the place. I'm like, all right, must be a bit further down. Keep walking down. This middle-aged guy is still just kind of like hanging out this like first floor window. Like half his body is out the window and he's just looking up the street at me. And he's just staring at me the whole time. And I'm getting closer. I'm like, what's this guy's fucking problem? And I keep walking up the street and I start thinking, oh Christ, I think that could be this guy hanging out the window. Looks like it could be where I'm staying. So I get closer and closer, and it's hard to not look up at the man hanging out the window in the middle of the afternoon. So I get a bit closer, and all I hear is him going, and this guy just goes, Ralph? And I was like, yes. Turns out the guy hanging at the window is the guy who's running Pickwick Hall, clearly with a lot on his plate. So again, it's a really nice area, really, really nice area. And then I look at the one door on the street where I'm staying, the one double doors where I'm staying that look like they had been smashed in with a hammer. They look like they hadn't been painted since before World War II. Once again, I arrive at an absolute dump. And I saw a little sign on the door that said, Hostel World rates this place, like fucking, I don't know what, 2.3 or something. And I was like, I've done it again. I'm falling for it again. And so then I started thinking, what's Pickwick Hall? What's this going to be? Some like Lord of the Rings themed youth hostel? What's it? Twilight themed youth hostel? What is this place going to be? So I walk into this window hanging guy, comes down, lets me in. Barely even says a word to me. He just kind of leads me up this miserable carpeted staircase, up this really depressing hallway. And then I was like, oh, you've excelled yourself this time, Ralph. And he opens the door to the room where I'm staying for that night. And I swear to God, if this room didn't have a window, you would be like, oh, this is a prison cell. This is a prison cell. If it hadn't been for that window, this room is effectively a prison cell. You'd be like, oh, this is a detention centre. People have been sent here to be punished. No one is coming here of their own free will, apart from me. I'm the only one paying for the privilege of staying in Pickwick Hall. All the other offenders are just sent here to serve the time. Yet I'm here because I chose to be here. It was like a really small single bed, a sink next to the bed. Was there even a kettle? I don't even think there was a kettle. You probably can't have a kettle because then you'd attack the prison guards with the boiling water. So they probably didn't have a kettle there. And the guy closed the door, and I remember just sitting down onto this really uncomfortable bed, and I've been like, well, I've done it again. And also, I was there, maybe like, I arrived on this Saturday afternoon. I left Sunday morning about 12. I didn't see another single person in that place. I never heard anyone else. I never saw anyone else. There was no traces of any other human beings in this Pickwick Hall. No one else was there. And you're probably thinking, of course they weren't, Ralph. No one is paying £50 to stay in a place like that. Everyone else is paying maybe £75 and getting like a Premier Inn or something. Not me. Went back to the quarterfinals. Wasn't much better. Didn't get through the quarterfinals. And I was like, oh yeah, you sad you didn't get through. No, I'm not. I'm sad I lost £400 for no reason. And put myself through hell, not sleeping in my own comfy bed. I travelled to London for what can only be described as punishment. Like, oh, did you have a nice time in London? No, I bloody didn't. No. Oh, will you go back into the competition again? And not a chance. Not a chance. Am I ever travelling to London for a competition again? Will I have stayed in my final shithole ever? Definitely not. I can make a promise to you here and now. I guarantee my whole comedy career, I will be staying in bomb sites, prison cells, skips, probably some kennels, wheelie bins. I will be staying in subpar accommodation for all of my comedy career. So there will be many more stories like this to come. I can make that as a promise to you today. There'll be more episodes coming. I've got more gigs I need to travel for coming up in the next few weeks and months, so there are going to be more stories. I can guarantee you that. But for now, let's call it to an end for episode 3. I've enjoyed this one. Not that I didn't enjoy the first two, but it's getting a bit easier. It's getting a bit easier to sit in a room by yourself, just talking into a microphone as you look out the window, making uncomfortable eye contact with your neighbours. That's getting easier. So we're making progress here. And again, as you can tell, the rambling started because I don't know how to end it. It very much becomes something like, oh no, you hang up first when I'm the only one here, which makes it really weird. So that's it. Episode 3 done. Episode 4 will be coming out. Enjoy it when it's out. And good night. Unless you're listening to this in the morning, then good morning. Or the afternoon if you're listening in the afternoon. Goodbye.